Welcome to School Matters. I'm Joni Kopis, and today we have with us our two middle school principals, Mrs. Sheryl Burk, Wilson Middle School, Mr. Brandon Stanfill, Garfield Middle School. So welcome.
Thank you.
So first we'll start with you, Brandon, because you're a brand new principal at Garfield Middle School. However, you're not new to the community. Actually, you're coming back home. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a proud product of the Hamilton City Schools. I started my career at Hayes Elementary, and after Hayes Elementary, I was fortunate enough to spend a few years at George Washington Junior High. And from George Washington Junior High, I was able to find a successful career at Hamilton High as an athlete and a student. And from Hamilton High, I went on to Wittenberg University, and that's my career here in Hamilton.
Now, you weren't thinking originally of education. Weren't you thinking about law school?
Absolutely. For some reason, in second grade, I believe it was Miss Davis's class at Hayes Elementary, we had the student of the month, and you had to pick what you wanted to be growing up. And I said a lawyer, and I stuck with it until the pretty much the last minute of college. I ditched those hopes. It was a unique opportunity. The university I attended was very big on community.
Wittenberg, I believe?
Yes, Wittenberg University. They have a service learning component to graduation, and I had been dragging my feet a little bit, and it worked out to be the best experience. I was able to volunteer at an alternative high school, which once I got the opportunity to get in the door and work with the students, I said, this is what I want to do. And all that preparation, and really, I never doubted that I wanted to be a lawyer till the minute that I got a chance to work with kids. Very
good. And then after graduation from Wittenberg, then what did you do?
I joined an organization called Teach for America, and I was placed in Newark, New Jersey, where I spent about the last 8 years working in their public school system. I started as a teacher of English, and I then did some work in staff development, and finally became a vice principal, and then ultimately a principal in Newark.
And then just came back, so welcome back.
Thanks.
And you're an English teacher, which is coincidental because at Hamilton High, you had an English teacher named Mrs. Burk.
I absolutely did.
So you must be a proud teacher.
I am. Brandon was one of those students that you just never forget, and I was just so proud of everything that he did in the classroom, and I think I even typed some college recommendations for him and some applications even. That was before online applications, and just always had a good connect with him. I remember when he was in his first early years of teaching in Newark, and he called me and said, hey, I have an opportunity to move up, do something with curriculum, to teach teachers about Read 180. Should I do this? And I said to him then, do you want to be an administrator? And he said, yes. And I said, this is a stepping stone job. You should do that.
Well, you should be very proud then. So it's nice you guys are working together then.
Yes.
A nice connection.
It's actually funny. Before I even took over my first teaching assignment, I reached out to Miss Burk and her husband. I'd always admired Miss Burk as the single best teacher I've ever had. So, who better to ask?
You have that on camera, so that's good. Yes.
So
right.
Who better to ask than the person who pushed you the hardest? And it was always very important. And I think at every step in my career, there's been one of those random phone calls. Miss Burk,
well,
what do you think of this? And and that's one thing I can say about Miss Burk is she's always been interested in us, all of her students.
Right. Past high school.
Past high school, during high school, she cares. And that's one of the draws for me to come back to Hamilton, is that there are a number of people in our system who that's the commitment they make to children, and not just children as me as an adult calling her up at crazy hours. Miss Burk, do you remember me?
Right.
What do you think of this? And
so they go above and beyond.
They go above and beyond.
Very good. Well, I think now being in the middle school, that's sort of that awkward age because the students are in elementary. They're not quite yet high school. So you've got those 2 or 3 years of awkward age or what have you. But you guys have similar philosophies as well for that age level.
Yes, we do. I was so happy to have Brandon come back because he has all this experience in urban education and lots of good ideas and strategies about discipline with students, positive behavior supports. We early on started making connections and having conversations about those kinds of things. I think we both are kind of whole child. We believe in developing the whole child, and that middle school program beyond what's in the classroom is really important. Character education is important. And a lot of those structures that are in place in Hamilton are things that we really, really believe in.
And not only are you guys in constant communication, but your other administrators in your buildings work closely together.
Yeah, one of the things I would absolutely am trying to work for is to make sure that both buildings are communicating as much as possible. I mean, we service the children of Hamilton, and as much consistency as we can put in place. And also, the reality is that Ms. Burk deserves being recognized for how well her building has performed as at Garfield.
Excellent rating.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, yes, right?
We would be remiss if we did not tap into what is going on there and make sure that we have similar systems and practices to make sure that all of our kids in our city are serviced correctly.
Well, it makes sense because if a child moves within the city, going from one school to the other, you have the commonality there. And I think it'll help the students if they have to switch or transfer to schools.
Our counselors have worked on our schedule for next year and done a lot of sharing ideas back and forth. And I think our schedules will mirror each other a little more closely next year. We're learning some things from each other there. Our assistant principals are both working together, Robin Jordan and Matt Tudor, on a program through our after-school program at the Y, at the Central Y.
Great partnership at Central Y.
It really is, and kids can go there every day after school until 6 p.m. and it's a great program. In fact, we visited a couple weeks ago to see what was happening, and lots of different activities for kids. And so Robin and Matt are working on a Saturday activity, and it will be the culmination of maybe a basketball 3-on-3 tournament, even involving younger kids, and then culminating at the Y on that day. And we're really looking forward to that. All the logistics aren't figured out yet, but they're working together to make that happen.
Well, it makes sense because, you know, they get to know each other in 7th and 8th grade, and then they all come together as one unified class in the 9th grade. And I like your philosophy too, Brandon. You were talking about football assembly or basketball assembly when Garfield plays Wilson, and you're not really rivalries.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us. You know, at one point we had 3 middle schools here in town, and it allowed for, instead of a cross-town rivalry, it was, you know, a triad. So one week you wanted to beat Garfield, and the next week you wanted to beat GW. Whereas now, you know, we are kind of pitted against each other for lack of better words. And it's very important, and something Sheryl and I talk about is making sure that we are building that our students are community members and are going to be together very shortly. You know, it's only 2 years in middle school. So we have a number of opportunities where we're able to actually blend the kids and compete together. For example, our wrestling team is a blended opportunity. Our tennis programs are both comprised of both Garfield and Wilson
Track
students.
or golf, middle school?
Track, golf.
Soccer.
And, you know, for us, that's very important. You know, they can get a sense of what it will be like as they enter the freshman building in the high school. And oftentimes, you know, the kids are in close proximity of each other. They know each other through whether it's Little League programs. So as much as we can make sure we're building, if we compete, healthy competition, and then also those opportunities to blend to stop a rivalry, it's very important.
And you talked about communication. Your teachers also work together, like the mock trial.
Right. We have mock trials coming up. I think it's March 11th, and that's 7th graders from Wilson and from Garfield. And our teachers in our language arts honors block are really planning together. They meet together, they plan together, do a lot of sharing of ideas. There have been some crosstown conversations through Schoology with students. And
explain Schoology a little bit for the audience.
Well, it's an online system. It's kind of like Blackboard at the college level, where students can tap into lessons, videos, ideas, can post comments that are shared with others. It's a great tool, a great way for students to learn at home.
It's outside the classroom, 24/7 almost.
Kids say it kind of looks like Facebook. It kind of has that feel, and so it's very engaging.
So they love that, I'm sure.
That's what I was going to say, is probably the best way to summarize it would be like Facebook for educational Facebook. It's a social community that allows the sharing of information as well, videos, documents, and really sharing of ideas. And it's really up to the user to develop it. And so its potential is limitless.
And you also share various social agencies through your buildings.
Right, Butler Behavioral is in my building doing anger management. I think, I'm not sure.
We
if
work
they
with
would
St.
be-
Al's.
St.
St.
Al's.
Al's is in our building, counseling services for students, and yeah, lots of.
So again, a lot of
similar-
partnerships with different organizations to help the students and their families.
Well, I think the important thing is we're communicating on what works. If something works for Miss Burk, she shares that with me, and then also the same way. I mean, we have no walls. We'll say, hey, I tried this worked great, you
Right.
need to do it. Or Miss Burke will say,
Right.
you got to do this.
Right.
And that's, and that's what we want. It's not a competition of who's better. It's really how can we both be successful.
You also, one program we use is the positive behavior support. So explain a little bit about that, Sheryl.
Well, positive behavior supports are setting clear behavior expectations for students in different places in the building. Guidelines for hallways, cafeteria, intramurals, I think you call it rec at Garfield. And really just teaching those behaviors. You have to talk to kids about what those behaviors are, set those expectations, and do some teaching surrounding those. And then one thing, I think Brandon has kind of a little different approach at Garfield, which he can tell you about in a minute, but we kind of pulled together some students who would benefit from reflecting on their first semester progress, and we did like a half-day pull-out with a group of kids and did some team building and talked to them about what are your roadblocks for success. And positive behavior supports is about that kind of education to turn kids around in the behavior choices that they're making.
It seemed to work well with you then at Garfield?
Yes, one of the things we've actually implemented this year is Miss Jordan, my assistant principal, has been working very hard. We created something we called Griffin to Griffin. And Griffin to Griffin is a mentoring program that targets those same students, Miss Burke, we're talking about, students who we see have kind of gotten off track. We need to make sure every kid, we don't let any kids go, and what we do is we've had staff members from across the district, whether they're in the building, and some of our central office staff members have volunteered to oversee or look out for one student in particular. So we're trying to add an additional safety net. Some of the things we focus on with the children are setting short-term goals, like making sure our grades are good and getting through the school year. But we've also been working on them with setting long-term goals. So is college something they're interested in, or is there a trade that they want to pursue? And then really having those conversations, and we talk to the kids all the time about the difference between a goal and a dream. And if anything we accomplish in Griffin to Griffin this year, they'll know that what is the difference between a goal and a dream. And a dream is simply something you just want, whereas a goal is something you plan out to make sure you can get it. And we want to make sure they know how to get the things they want.
And then you also mentioned earlier, Sheryl, about the character education, which probably folds into the positive behavior support.
It certainly does. We have lessons weekly in advisory, character lessons. This year we're focusing on the skill of resiliency. How do you build that skill to cope with situations that are difficult?
And you talked too about career paths and what have you. And our Career Technical Center, Mr. Kent Bryson, comes to both of your schools with his 10 programs, and the kids are able to go to the gym and see what's out, what's available at the high school.
It's very
Get some thinking in 7th and 8th grade, what I want to do and what's out there.
Absolutely. And even with our Griffin to Griffin students, beyond when they come to school, we actually have arranged, we're taking them over so they can make sure they see the program. And we really, Hamilton has so much to offer. And sometimes being here, we tend to not realize how special our programs are. So we really want to make sure our kids get out and see that, we have tremendous opportunities for them.
Our kids find the career technical presentation just really engaging.
Because the students come down
The
from Hamilton
students
High,
come
right?
down
So they talk to
and
them.
they bring different things that perhaps they're working on, and they do some demonstrations, and it's a very engaging morning for our students. The other thing that we share is Junior Achievement works to put on a job shadowing day, 2 days, one for all our Garfield 8th graders and one for Wilson 8th graders. And so all of our kids get to go somewhere in the community to a business and spend a day kind of shadowing and learning about that business. And they learn so many things about different careers and responsibilities of the world of work.
And lets them know what all's out there, not only, the actual job itself, but some of the soft skills we talk about,
Right.
Daily attendance, punctuality, dress. So they get to see all that in a real life setting. Very good. Let's talk about education. It's changed so much from state and federal guidelines and what have you. The Common Core standards, let's talk a little bit about that and how that affects teachers and students.
Okay, well, we're very happy about that because we're language arts teachers. And the Common Core takes those literacy standards and makes them important in every discipline. And so that's probably one of the biggest changes with the Common Core. That each teacher is going to be a literacy teacher, a teacher of reading and writing. And, the Common Core asks for engagement with text and close reading and providing evidence to support an argument. It's about students talking and sharing and discussing ideas and lots of critical thinking.
And that starts next school year.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, and I think it also helps us define, if anything else, where our students should be when they're done. It gives us a clear path for what does it mean to be college ready, and it really sets the bar for every student to be college ready. So it's really going to force us as educators to rethink our approach, what happens when a student doesn't get something, and how we can ensure that they do and they meet these benchmarks. So I think the Common Core is designed for students, and it will require the adults to retool some of our practices and think about how we approach, which is not always a bad thing.
Right.
And I believe it's designed wholeheartedly for children, and that will help.
I think that all of the change in education really fits together.
It's making some sense.
It makes sense. Everything that teachers are learning in the professional development that's provided by Hamilton this year just matches with the new teacher evaluation system.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because
and at
that's
Wilson,
something all new as well, teacher evaluation.
We're piloting that
Right.
system at Wilson. All of the full-time teachers are being evaluated using that model. It's been a great learning experience for us.
Time consuming?
Time consuming, but worth it because it is really growing us, all of us.
And I assume as you continue to do it, it should be easier, makes more sense. So first year or two, maybe some learning curves and some grumbling, but it, like you said, it makes sense.
It's a model for teacher growth, really. And Brandon we can also share that the principals are under a new evaluation
Right.
system, and that's a growth model for us too.
Right.
So it's been interesting for me to be going through that new model myself. And being evaluated on a new model and sharing that with the teachers, and it's been a good learning process for both of us.
And you're right, Wilson piloted this year, and then next year the whole district will do that.
The whole state.
Yeah, and it used to be you would evaluate a third of your teachers every year, but now it's every teacher every year.
Yes.
So, and you get good, like you said, good feedback and learning tool for the teachers.
Yes.
Very good. And then we talked about the individual child and Common Core and get to know the strengths and the weakness of each of your students. And some of that is also with your intervention programs that you guys offer as well.
We do lots of different things. We have various target lists for students, looking at OAA scores, looking at value-added data. Teams look at students who are struggling. We're even doing that on a monthly basis, which students are struggling with the current learning. And all of this change is really pushing us as educators to take instruction down to the individual level.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time with data this year as a building. We went through and actually identified strengths and weaknesses of every single student in the building based on not just how they did last year, but we actually took the trends as far back as the data would let us go. And that for us it was very important. We need to see, is a weakness really a weakness, or did a kid just have a bad test? We want to make sure when we go in and work with a student that the work we're doing is exactly the work that's needed. And I think that's really where some of the changes in education are pushing us for. It's not about making sure you cover the textbook from cover to cover.
Right.
It's really about making sure that the students have the skills necessary, and when they're weak in a skill, making sure that they improve on it, because I don't think we'll find any one student who can do everything correctly.
Right.
and we need to make sure we're tailoring our approach to their needs.
And you talked about pushing the student, and at the other end of the spectrum is our gifted students with the enrichment. And let's talk a little bit about what we offer for them as well, because you want to push them even farther than they are.
Well, I think in our Honors Academy, students are really pushed, particularly in language arts, where the curriculum looks different from other curriculum. Of course, 8th graders are taking a 9th grade math course, and they receive high school credit. And so things are kind of bumped up for them. And typically at the 7th and 8th grade level, students are in those honors classes across the board. We do make some exceptions, but typically we're meeting those students' needs in all subject areas.
And they're being challenged. I mean, there's no doubt if you go into one of those honors classrooms, you might think you're sitting in a high school English classroom or a high school mathematics classroom. And that's really the idea. We want to make sure our students are getting, being pushed to the level that they can handle, but also are getting an opportunity to grow.
And I think you made a good point, because I think it's hard for your average viewer to understand, 8th grade math, but it's so much different than when we went to school. It's, I remember as a parent trying to help my son or daughter in 6th grade math. I thought, I remember doing this in 9th grade. So I think education as a whole is asking more of students at an earlier age.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the expectation is that these students have been through algebra before they get to high school, whereas I think most of us know when we were in high school, algebra fell, somewhere close, in our high school years, and we're now, I mean, that's one thing I think, the expectations on students are much higher than they've ever been. And
isn't part of that having 4 years of math, which is relatively new? Used to be 3 years, and now you have to graduate with 4 years of math. And that can be a challenge just for some.
It can be, but if you look at where the job market and where the openings are, it's going to be a requirement down the road. We engineers are in high demand. People who can do the mathematical work are in high demand. It's where we need to, one, produce our students to be successful and really put them in a place to be competitive nationally as well as internationally.
And we talked about the different partners. You talked about the YMCA, the after-school program. We have a strong adopt-a-school program. You each have some nice adopt-a-school partners. Your social agencies. It's safe to say that, schools can't do it alone. We need help in a variety of different partners and organizations that are willing to help.
We definitely need that help, and having those partners is significant as we try to meet the needs of our students.
Right.
Yeah. No one can do everything, but together we can all do something, and it's very important to pull in those outside resources, and not just from a standpoint of resources thinking, a partner and providing something, but the human capital, the interest. It's so
mentoring, that's important.
Mentoring, or even the kids getting an opportunity to meet people in professions that they may have never experienced. Those are some of the things that you can gain from working with different agencies and different groups, and just the support. It's very important to know that you're not in this alone and that the community is behind you.
Well, great. Well, I wanted to welcome you again, because no matter which of the 8 elementary schools that you attend, you'll be at one of your 2 buildings. And I think it's important for not only your students but your parents to know you, but I think the larger community as well. So we say thank you for coming, and welcome back to Hamilton, Brandon. Glad you came back.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, good. And thank you too, Sheryl, for being with us.
You're welcome.
And this concludes School Matters for TV Hamilton. I'm Joni Kopis. Have a good day.